Good evening. I'm Dr. Jesse Morse, a sports medicine physician in Miami, and we're going to talk about this unfortunate situation we saw tonight with Tua Tagovailoa, where he suffered another concussion and an immediate response that was very concerning. Before we go any further, I'm going to show you the play that it happened on. If you don't want to see it, then please turn away for about the next 20 seconds. So Tua's in the process of trying to rush for a first down. And last year, he would do a ton of sliding. This year, he has not done as much. And he's rushing here, and he's trying to make, I think, a 4th and 4 near basically the 10-yard line. And he ends up running into basically Damar Hamlin and into Hamlin's kind of chest, and he kind of cranks his neck. It immediately goes down to the ground. Now, I want you to watch Tua's response of his right arm and the rest of his body posture. That is what we call a fencing response. And this is what happens when there is trauma to what we call the midbrain. And that will send a response. About 2/3 of concussions that result in unconsciousness have a fencing response, but only 11% of concussions suffer unconscious. So this is usually a sign of severity, and this is a big deal. He eventually was evaluated by his medical personnel, the team docs, and then walked off the field. Later, the announcer said that he had full range of motion. He had no, he was still awake, no quote unquote deficits, and he was by his family in the medical area in the locker room. So I want to break down a couple things that happened. Yes, he suffered a concussion. Okay. But unfortunately, this is not the first time that he suffered a fencing response. I'm going to take you back to September 29th, 2022. 4 days after suffering a concussion that they basically ruled a back injury, Tua, also on a Thursday night, hit and had this kind of fencing response where his hands were up. You can see my tweet right here. That was also a concussion. He eventually returned after several games, and then suffered another concussion on Christmas that took him several months to clear the concussion protocol. He missed the rest of the season. Now, he did not suffer any concussions in 2023. And part of that reason, in my opinion, was because he did judo and he did a bunch of things to help learn him how to break his fall and help prevent any more traumas. So it was a good idea. And I was impressed. He didn't have any concussions. I was like, okay, great. But unfortunately, he trimmed up this year. And usually he would slide. He did not slide on this play. And unfortunately, an awful result. Now, after about 10 minutes or so, the Miami Dolphins tweeted that he had suffered concussion and he's done for the game. So the exact number of concussions that he has suffered is not clear. To my knowledge, there's at least 4, probably 5. He's admitted to one in December of 2019, even though there was no games in that time period. So that likely happened in practice or in a time that he wasn't on the field. To my data accumulation, and I have done this for most players in the NFL that are quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, or tight ends, I've documented their entire injury history that we know publicly. And my suspicion is Tua probably has a couple more concussions that he's not willing to admit to. Some of them maybe had in high school, some of them maybe in college that we don't know about, or even not, on a playing field that he technically could have suffered one, car accidents, so on and so forth. But with each time you suffer a concussion, there is a response that has a tendency to build up, and your threshold for suffering a new concussion goes down. There's also some data to support that he has an increased risk of sustaining concussion for the next, I believe it's 90 days, which is, a majority of the season. Now, there's multiple questions that become raised. The first question is, hypothetically, when can he return? And we'll talk about retiring in a second, whether or not that's relevant. But this is not something he's likely going to clear in a week or 10 days. It took him several months to clear the last one. And I have it in my injury note. I don't remember off the top of my head. But that gives you an idea of how severe this is. Now, if he was my patient, he is not. I would have him do hyperbaric chamber. I would have him do something called methylene blue, which is either oral or IV, which can help with neurological issues. He also needs to consider stabilizing his neck because indirectly that neck not being able to handle the load leads to translation of energy, which leads to a concussion. Now, many people have already asked me on Twitter, should he retire? And that's a very, very good question. He's already made more money than most of us will ever see in our entire lives. So he's financially set, per se. He's going to want to play the game more. He's going to have unfinished business. If you saw the severity of his hip injury in college that ended his career in college, I thought there was a very good chance he may never make it to the NFL because of that injury. So, in my opinion, he's almost playing on borrowed time as it is. Now we look at it, he's been able to command an impressive offense, but this is at least his 5th concussion and probably more than that. And at a point, you have to figure out when life is more important than football. And he is at significant risk for not only another concussion, but also CTE, if and whenever that arises. And also, these are traumatic brain injuries. You can replace your knee. You can't replace your brain. So I need people to understand that we don't just wipe the slate clean and get back on the field. Maybe we did that 20, 30 years ago, but that's no longer the case. I don't know why he's not wearing a Guardian helmet. I don't care how stupid they look. If it can prevent you from having a concussion, another concussion, or doing what you just did on the field again and scarring millions of people's eyes and all the players on his team and opposing team, it's worth it. If he has to wear a Q collar and whether or not those actually work, fine. But he has to figure something out. And I don't know where the line is to say, hey, as a medical staff, as a medical physician, and I have the qualifications to be a team doc. My mentor is a team doc. If he was my patient, I would give him a long, hard talk and say, Tua, I know you want to play the game, but isn't there more to life than this? Don't you want to watch your kids grow older? Don't you want to spend time with your wife, not having to worry about if you can't speak, if you have permanent disabilities, if you can't remember anything? Like, this is I know you want to play football, but sometimes we have to think bigger. So I genuinely think this is going to be a true discussion, whether it's the team, whether it's his family, his friends, his mentors, whoever it is. That discussion needs to be had. Rarely do we call for players to retire because of a concussion. One name comes to mind, Jordan Reed. Maybe he needs to talk to him if he hasn't. But I hope that sheds some light and some information on someone who treats concussions, who understands what's going on with these guys. I have several NFL players as patients myself. And someone who studies the game and studies sports medicine and understands that there are way more injury risks involved. Thank you for tuning in. If you like this type of content, do me a favor, smash a thumbs up, subscribe, check out our injury histories on the injuryexperts.com. If you want to make a free account, you can see a bunch of cool stuff there. And I wish the best of luck to Tua. I have no idea when he's coming back. It could be in 2 weeks. It could be after the bye. It could be season ending. Anything. It could be career ending. Any of that is within the realm of possibility. On a separate day, I'll talk about the fantasy ramifications of this injury. But today, I'm going to save it for this. Thank you for tuning in. Take care.